If you cheat again, I'll disown you and fire you. My husband, who had been scolded by his father, started being nicer to me for a while. One day, my husband called me from his business trip. I fell from the scaffolding during an inspection and broke both legs in a complicated fracture. According to the doctor, I might never be able to walk again. Kyle suggested that we should get a divorce because he didn't want to burden me with taking care of him for the rest of my life. Normally, hearing such news would shock someone into tears. However, I couldn't hold back my laughter and tears because of how absurd and perfectly timed it was. We're already divorced, aren't we? Besides, your precious affair partner on your business trip will take care of you, right? Kyle was visibly shocked by my unexpected words. By the way, your dad is here. As soon as I mentioned his father's name, Kyle, who was supposed to have broken legs, turned pale and ran off, jumping off the balcony. My name is Rebecca. In my 20s, I worked in accounting at a large construction company in my hometown. That's where I met Kyle, a colleague and the company CEO's son. I can't remember the exact details since it was so long ago, but Kyle seemed to take a liking to me and pursued me persistently. Eventually, in my 30s, I gave in and accepted his proposal. After quitting my job to get married, I became a housewife, supporting my husband Kyle. George, Kyle's father and the CEO of the construction company where I worked, was always a kind and gentle person, even back when I was just an employee and he was my boss, before I got married. After we got married, he continued to treat me warmly, like his own daughter. I've always loved cooking, and after becoming a housewife, I started making more elaborate dishes. One day, I had the chance to serve a meal to my father-in-law, who praised it highly, saying it was delicious. Since he had raised Kyle on his own after his wife passed away, he was delighted to enjoy a woman's home-cooked meal again after so long. When we invited him for a Father's Day dinner, he was overjoyed and said with a big smile, "You're too good a wife for my son." On the other hand, from the beginning of our marriage, Kyle started treating me like a maid. When he got home from work, he'd arbitrarily decide whether he wanted a bath or dinner first, and if I didn't have both ready, he'd get annoyed. I always had to keep Kyle's favorite brand of beer and snacks stocked in the fridge, and if they were sold out at the store and I couldn't get them, he would mercilessly throw things at me. He'd lie on the couch watching TV, and if I made even the slightest mistake with the housework, he'd get furious. Living like this every day built up a lot of stress. I would sometimes give him silent glares in protest, but he'd just yell, "If you don't want to be thrown out, do as I say." Despite growing increasingly frustrated with Kyle, I managed to continue our marriage for a year, thanks to the support of my father-in-law. Lately, I had become suspicious of Kyle's behavior. "I'm working late again today," Kyle would say as he left the house, which was the reason for my suspicion. Recently, he claimed to have overtime every day, coming home late at night. Previously, he had used his position as the company CEO's son to leave work early, delegating his tasks to subordinates. It was hard to believe that someone who had always relied on his position would suddenly develop a strong work ethic. My intuition told me to investigate, so I emailed a former colleague with whom I had been close when I worked there. When I received a reply, it said, "He's still leaving earlier than anyone else, just like before." There was no other reason for a husband to lie to his wife and go out at night besides having an affair. I wondered how to catch him, but the opportunity came surprisingly easily. That night, Kyle returned home late as he said, and after dinner, he lazily watched TV on the couch. While I washed the dishes after Kyle finished eating, I kept a close eye on him. I didn't miss the moment his phone, placed nearby, lit up for an instant. Pretending to water the houseplant behind the couch, I approached Kyle. He usually wore glasses, but his eyesight was so poor that he had to bring his face close to read the text on his phone. I seized this moment. "That's a lot of heart stickers." Kyle, who hadn't noticed I was behind him, hurriedly put away his phone. "How did you find out? Are you a mind reader or something? Want me to tell you? Your phone screen is reflected in your glasses. Honestly, if you're gonna cheat, at least be discreet about it." Unfortunately, I can't read the words through the reflection, but those hearts are undeniable proof, aren't they? At first, Kyle was flustered and confused by how easily I caught him cheating. But then he regained his composure and, to my surprise, started smirking defiantly at me. What's wrong with cheating? I'm the next CEO, after all. It's only natural for a CEO to have one or two mistresses. Kyle was completely unapologetic, standing with his hands on his hips and laughing loudly. I had already realized that Kyle had no love for me when he started treating me like a maid. This affair just confirmed it beyond any doubt. I felt more regret than sadness, wondering why I had ever married such a person. If I had known I'd be treated this way, I would have kept refusing Kyle's advances and never quit my job. The next morning, I called my father-in-law and told him about Kyle's affair. I also told him that I had recordings on my phone and diary entries detailing how I had been treated like a maid and the things Kyle had said to me. I wanted to show him all of it. My usually gentle father-in-law was furious on the phone and came over immediately. How shameless. You think it's normal for a company CEO to have mistresses? I've been a faithful husband while fulfilling my duties as CEO. And now, you're doing the exact opposite with your foolish behavior. Kyle, overwhelmed by his father's sudden arrival and anger, couldn't say a word in his defense. When did I ever say you'd be the next CEO? Don't think you'll keep your position after this disgrace. Wait, Dad! Kyle, realizing his future as CEO was at risk, couldn't stay silent. If you betray Rebecca again, you'll never set foot in this house, and you'll be fired. With Kyle completely defeated, my father-in-law made him sign a memorandum, warning him never to repeat the same mistake again, and then he left. From the next day on, Kyle's attitude toward me completely changed, becoming much more humble. Not only did he come straight home from work, but he also started giving me shoulder massages and doing household chores without me even asking. His change in behavior was so drastic that it was almost eerie. It seemed my father-in-law's lecture had a significant effect, but things soon took an unexpected turn. One afternoon, I went to my favorite nearby cafe. I wondered if Kyle was diligently working, keeping his promise from the memorandum. As I sipped my coffee and thought about these things, I heard the doorbell at the cafe entrance ring, so I glanced in that direction. A young employee from Kyle's company walked in. I remembered him because he joined the company right before I left to get married. When he noticed me, he greeted me with, "Long time no see," indicating that he remembered me. However, after greeting me, the employee immediately turned on his heel and left the cafe. I found his behavior odd, but the next day, I found an envelope in my mailbox. When I opened it, there was a photo of me greeting the employee at the cafe. I was perplexed by the obvious hidden camera shot. When Kyle got home from work that day, he immediately said something outrageous. "You cheated on me, didn't you? This photo was sent to the CEO's office today." Kyle threw the photo on the desk, the same one that had been in our mailbox. We just exchanged a few greetings. Besides, who took this photo? I don't care. It's karma for tattling to my dad and making me look bad. Kyle accused me as if he had just won a great victory. Now, let's get divorced and have you leave this house right away. Kyle probably thought he was getting revenge for what happened earlier, but in my case, I was completely innocent. I asked to consult with my father-in-law, but Kyle sneered and said, "It's pointless to do that." Despite this, I managed to contact my father-in-law, who responded with remarkable calmness. "Don't worry. I know Rebecca is not that kind of person. It's fortunate the cafe owner is an old fishing buddy of mine. I'll ask him what happened." Thanks to my father-in-law's investigation, I was quickly and easily cleared of any suspicion. Moreover, Kyle was scolded by him. "Don't compare her to you, someone with a history." Kyle looked deeply humiliated, biting his lip in frustration. I had a feeling my intuition was kicking in again. After this unexpected turn of events, Kyle stopped being excessively humble towards me. He came straight home but showed no interest in me and barely spoke to me. I was already over Kyle, so I didn't mind, but I started thinking about my future. 6 months passed like this, but one day, my husband came home from work and said something unexpected. "I'm going on a business trip next week." Kyle going on a business trip was very unusual. He always said, the future CEO needs to stay at the company, and I had never seen him go on one before. I don't really want to go, but I have to inspect a construction site and explore new opportunities for our company far away. That's how Kyle responded to my question, but my intuition kicked in again, so I emailed my former colleague just like before. It turned out that this business trip was originally assigned to a colleague, but Kyle had desperately negotiated, saying, "Please let me go," and managed to get the assignment. This might be a good opportunity. While Kyle prepared for his trip, I started making plans. As planned, Kyle left for the business trip. Just a week after being away, there was already some movement. I received a call from Kyle. I fell from the scaffolding during the inspection and broke both my legs in a complicated fracture. According to the doctor, I might never walk again. "I think we should get a divorce since I don't want to burden you with taking care of me." Normally, hearing such news would shock someone into tears. However, I couldn't hold back my laughter and tears because of how absurd and perfectly timed it was. Finding it ridiculous, I decided it was time to put an end to this. So, I got straight to the point. "Oh? What are you talking about? We got divorced a week ago." "What? What do you mean?" "To get divorced, we need to sign the papers." Of course, I wrote down the names properly. "So don't worry about that. Just let Lily, who's right there with you, take care of you with all her love." I could sense Kyle freezing up on the other end of the line. "How do you know about Lily? And that she's here?" "Yes, that's right. I know everything. But since I've come all this way, it might not be a bad idea to say hello to her as your ex-wife." "What? What do you mean you've come all this way? You can't be serious." Ignoring Kyle's obvious panic on the other end of the line, I pressed the intercom button in front of me. "No way! Does that mean?" He seemed to be shocked to hear the intercom chime through his phone. The door slowly opened, revealing a young woman standing there, looking surprised. "Hello there. This must be the first time we meet. I'm Rebecca, Kyle's ex-wife. I heard your boyfriend has been through a lot." I spoke to Kyle, who was lying on the back sofa watching TV despite claiming to be hospitalized. He said he had a complex fracture in both legs, but there he was, perfectly fine without a single bandage, staring at me in shock with his mouth open. "Oh? You didn't need to be hospitalized? With a complex fracture in both legs, I thought you'd be bedridden with your legs in a sling." "What is going on? How are you here? How did you know I was here? We were just on the phone. You must be a mind reader." Kyle was so surprised that he fell off the sofa. "Oh dear, if you panic too much, you might actually break your legs this time." I smirked as I watched the two of them, who were still confused by the situation. Yes, I was at the apartment of Kyle's affair partner, Lily, and I had been talking to Kyle on the phone right outside this apartment's front door. I had planned to surprise you by ringing the doorbell and coming in quietly, but your call in front of the apartment surprised me instead. Maybe you're the one with psychic abilities? Stop joking. How did you find this place? He was so confused that I thought he might mistake me for a ghost. So, I decided to explain how I figured everything out. My intuition told me something was off when Kyle suddenly wanted to go on a business trip. My suspicions began with the false accusation of infidelity at the cafe. I didn't think Kyle framed me out of spite for being scolded by his father. I believed he did it to cover up his own ongoing affair. So, I waited for the young employee who greeted me at the cafe in front of the company and questioned him. He admitted that everything was done under Kyle's orders and that the hidden camera photo was taken by another subordinate. Once I realized that the incident at the cafe was a setup, it was clear that Kyle was up to something. So, while he was sleeping at night, I secretly took his phone, unlocked it using fingerprint recognition, and installed a GPS tracking app. I figured Kyle wouldn't notice it if I hid the app deep inside a folder he rarely used, given his poor eyesight. Additionally, while he was away for work, I installed a surveillance camera in his home office, where he spent long hours alone playing games. The camera captured him filling out the divorce papers and hiding them among the comic books on the bookshelf. That's why I went ahead and filed the divorce papers. By the way, when I checked your car's dashcam, I found footage of your creepy rendezvous, with you calling out Lily repeatedly. Lily, who had been standing beside Kyle in shock, now understood what I meant by first time we meet. See? I'm not a mind reader. You've been so self-absorbed, treating me like a maid, that you didn't see what was happening around you. Anyone could figure this out without hiring a private investigator. Kyle, with a grimace, said nothing and avoided eye contact, staring at the white walls of the apartment. How can someone so oblivious be fit to be the next CEO? And even before that, if your father finds out about this, it won't end well for you.
Wait! Please, don't let that happen! I'm sorry! I was wrong!
Kyle, jolted by my words. Apologizing to me won't help. Besides, it's only a matter of time before the truth comes out, right? Because, actually, your father is here today. As I started to say this, Kyle's face turned pale.
No way! You can't be serious! Move out of the way!
Kyle hurried past me and went to the front door. There's no one here. Oh. Seeing the empty hallway, Kyle quickly shut the front door and screamed, "Oh no, it's Dad." Then he ran past me again, this time heading for the balcony. In a panic, he actually jumped off the balcony. Lily screamed and collapsed to the floor. This room is on the second floor, and jumping from this height wouldn't end well. Immediately, I heard a scream, new from downstairs. Ignoring Lily, who was panicking and seemed utterly useless, I decided to show a bit of mercy and call an ambulance for the pathetic man writhing on the asphalt below. As I stepped out to go downstairs and explain the situation to the paramedics, I saw an elderly man walking down the hallway and entering a room. It seemed that Kyle had mistaken that man for his father. What a pitiable man, unable to recognize even his own father in a moment of panic. A man with poor eyesight and even poorer judgment is destined for a tragic end. Kyle was taken to the hospital, and this time he truly had complex fractures in both legs, requiring a few months of hospitalization. As a divorced woman, I had no obligation to take care of him anymore. However, even with a son like Kyle, my father-in-law was swamped with company duties and covering the vacant position, making him very busy. Additionally, I thought it would be better for a woman to handle the detailed preparations for the hospital stay. So, I decided to help my father-in-law, who had been good to me, by taking care of those tasks at the hospital. When I entered the hospital room, Kyle didn't apologize for his infidelity or thank me for preparing everything for his stay. Instead, he just complained.
Why did you lie about Dad being there? Because you tricked me, I ended up like this. How rude! Unlike you, I don't lie to people.
Angry, I gave his heavily bandaged leg a light poke.
Ouch! Stop it! That hurts!
His scream echoed through the room as he grimaced in pain. I only meant to say that your father was in town for a business meeting. I never said he came to the apartment. I was worried when you said you had broken your legs, but your father assured me everything would be fine if I was there. When I said that, Kyle sulked and clicked his tongue. And what about that woman, Lily? You'd think she'd come rushing to take care of you after what happened. Kyle answered awkwardly to my question. She's busy with work. She's the most popular woman in town, so she can't help it. Besides, I plan to marry her. Oh, really? Well, do as you please. No matter the circumstances, hearing such words from someone I was once married to didn't faze me at all. Looking back, this revenge wasn't driven by jealousy. It was to save myself from being dragged around by a selfish man who didn't care about anyone else. And with the occasional help of my father-in-law, I aimed to ensure that no other woman would have to suffer like I did. I had to divorce you to marry her, right? But since I was the one cheating with Lily, if we divorced because of that, Dad wouldn't stay quiet. Of course not. He'd definitely fire you immediately. Exactly. And Dad dotes on you like a daughter. That annoyed me too. Whenever something happened, he always took your side. Maybe he was starved for a woman's attention after Mom passed away. I sighed, exasperated at Kyle's disrespectful words about his own father, and glanced at the hospital room door. So, I asked my subordinate to fabricate evidence of your infidelity to use as grounds for divorce, but that failed. My next plan was to fake a severe injury, claim I was paralyzed, and use that as a reason to divorce you. So you meant to lie, but ended up seriously injured and bedridden. And the woman you love isn't even visiting you because of her work. How pathetic. Say whatever you want. No matter what, I want to divorce you and start over with Lily. But the divorce can't be my fault. It has to be your fault. Kyle confessed everything without me even asking. He might think he's playing the tragic hero, but he's sorely mistaken if he believes that confessing everything will earn him forgiveness. Now, it was time to turn this into a true tragedy for him. I understand your story. So, that's how it is. Did you hear all that, Father? Huh? Kyle was stunned when I suddenly raised my voice and said that. When I opened the door to the hospital room, there stood my former father-in-law, George. Upon seeing him, Kyle's face turned as pale as it had when he jumped off the apartment balcony. I heard everything. You are a disgrace. It's your right to love whoever you want. But after causing Rebecca so much trouble, your excuses make me question your humanity. Dad, wait, it's not like that. Ignoring Kyle's panicked protests, he pulled a piece of paper from his bag. Do you remember this memo, right? I told you that if you made the same mistake again, you would never step foot in our house again and be fired. Dad, please, listen to me. Quiet. Don't call me Dad anymore. You're a disgrace to our family. You're disowned. George threw the memorandum at Kyle and left the room. Well, I've done everything I can for you. Goodbye. I doubt we'll ever see each other again. Wait. Please, you have to convince him. I'll pay you. Don't you know any of his weaknesses? If you're such a mind reader, you must know something. I'm not a mind reader, I'm more like someone with very keen ears. According to my information, a lawyer will be here soon to discuss my alimony. So, please talk to them about my compensation. Goodbye. As I started to leave the room, Kyle jumped out of bed trying to follow me. Ow! The result was obvious. Kyle let out a scream that echoed through the hospital, and the intense pain caused him to collapse to the floor and faint. I shrugged and gave a wry smile, pressing the nurse call button as a final act of mercy before leaving the hospital. After that, thanks to George's kindness, Kyle avoided being fired from the company. However, HR decided to transfer him to a subsidiary in a rural area right after his discharge from the hospital. Kyle had been relying heavily on his position as the CEO's son, and he was incompetent at his job, barely holding a title of section chief in name only. When he was transferred, no one cared or worried about him. Abandoned by both George and me, Kyle asked his last hope, Lily, of course, you'll come with me, right? Her response was a harsh, huh? No way. Kyle had played the role of the tragic hero and wanted to marry Lily, but their relationship vanished instantly after he was disowned and transferred. Then, as I was looking for a job after being freed from being a housewife, I received a call one day from George. If you'd like, how about working in our company's cafeteria? That way, I can enjoy your home-cooked meals every day. I readily accepted his offer, and returning to the employee-CEO relationship, I began cooking in the company cafeteria every day. My home-cooked meals became a big hit within the company, and on weekends, many young employees started visiting my home to learn how to cook.